Hello, my name is Mike Ignatoski, the creator of the BlueLynx Hockey Spreadsheet, the spreadsheet that uses Excel programming to help you conveniently manage your tabletop hockey league project, including the standings, the schedule, but most of all, the player and team stats for your entire league. BlueLynx was created to help you get more enjoyment out of your tabletop hockey projects by giving you more time to play the games and look over the stats instead of painstakingly calculating them and entering them into a spreadsheet. In this video, I'm going to cover how to use the BlueLynx Scoresheet, which is the heart and soul of the whole spreadsheet, because that's where you record the stats from your games, and obviously that's the whole point of pretty much using this spreadsheet, is to be able to track the results and stats from your games over an entire tabletop hockey project. So let's see how this works. In this recording, I'm going to be using my 1971 historic league season, which has kind of been used for a whole variety of things. But to demonstrate the score sheet, majority of the score sheet functionality, I'm going to specifically look at my schedule here, and I'm going to play this Detroit versus Chicago game, or at least parts of it. So, but first let's get to the score sheet and just take a look around. Obviously, you can kind of see how the main layout of the score sheet. Around the side and top, there are various buttons that maybe give it some colorful clutter, but they do have some use. Up here on the left is the version of your spreadsheet, which is helpful when you're thinking about either for upgrading it or for support reasons. It's good to know what version you're using. This reload league button, this has mostly it's useful when you get an error or sometime for some reason. It's best to click this after you close the error box, just to kind of reload your league behind the scenes, as sometimes that can solve your problem if you've clicked something that hey, maybe you shouldn't have. But for the most part, you shouldn't need it. Like I said, unless you run into an error, or sometimes if you're changing the colors on the fly, you'll need to click that button to activate your new colors for your teams. But this navigator is this window here. So if I close this, this is the BlueLynx navigator. It is just an easier way to try to get around in all the different sheets of the spreadsheet. Although once you get started on your league, you don't use that many. That's why in this main, it talks about the score sheet, the schedule, and the standings. They're kind of the main ones. And you may or may not be using the injury chart or the notes, the box score, or the bench. That's up to you. Then there's all the stats. There's 9 sheets for stats. The league setup is here. Once you've done your setup, you probably don't need to go back here much. Then there's the score sheet setup, which talks about the game options, the stat configuration, and the dice, if you happen to want to use the electronic dice ruler component of BlueLynx. There's the help, which the league help is useful right now. The score sheet help doesn't really exist yet. And this miscellaneous is just for probably stuff nobody really cares too much about. Although once the versions start going up, it is sometimes helpful to know what version you're on or what's new in a given version. That's a way to find out. But anyway, that's the BlueLynx navigator. It's just a way to jump from sheet to sheet without having to use the bottom, but you can always use the bottom tabs themselves if you'd like to. These two are, the main buttons at the end of your game, but during the game you don't really need them at all. This box score and prep for print are also just pretty much at the end of the game. These zoom buttons do just that. they're helpful if depending on the size of your screen. But if you want to, just make sure you see all your score sheet with on your screen or whatever. You can use these buttons to make it a little bit bigger or make it a little bit smaller. You can also see that down here in the corner it'll change, but it's hard to sometimes get the slider if you just want it. Well, I want it just at 103. That's where it fits my screen the best. It might be easier to do that here than it is using this slider down here. Anyway, so then over here on the left there's the game ID, which we don't have any game loaded, so there's nothing here. There's the score sheet mode, which says we're in league mode with historical league season. And there's this button here is strictly to, it does just what it says. It sure hides this top row. Sometimes if you're playing your game, you might want to hide that just to give yourself, show more of your score sheet that you need on your screen, depending on how big that is. The show hide player IDs, you typically won't need that, so I'm going to ignore it, but this kind of shows there's some things behind the scenes that the spreadsheet needs to do its work. This is if you want to use electronic dice roller. I'm not really going to cover that today. These other two I have to do with shootouts, and I think I'll make a separate video on shootouts. Your project may or may not even need shootouts, but if you do, it'll be a video worth watching. This show hide goalie row is just that. So here's the goalie section, and depending on whether you want to see that during the game, this would just show or hide those rows. So anyway, those are some of the buttons. Also, I'll say before we load a game, this kind of assumes, before you can load a game, you pretty much, excuse me, probably have completed several steps leading up to this. So one is you obviously downloaded the BlueLynx spreadsheet. You've created a league, either a historical league or a custom league. And if you create a custom league, then you're going to need at least one game on your schedule so you can play it. You should have configured your starting lineups for teams, ideally all your teams, but at least the teams you want to that are going to play in your first game. And hopefully configured some custom colors for the teams. That makes it the score sheet look a lot nicer. And lastly, figured out what statistical categories you want to track for your project and how to set the spreadsheet up to capture and track those statistical categories. So those are kind of some of the prep before you can start really playing games. So now let's talk about getting ready to play a game. In this demonstration, I'm going to load a game between the Red Wings and the Blackhawks. So let's see how to do that. So on my score sheet, I'm going to click this game ID. Also, I want to point out these cells with the red triangles in the corners have helpful information in them if you hover on your mouse on them. So I go to the game ID and I click this. It'll bump me over to my schedule and tells me to select the game ID of the game I want to play or load into the score sheet. So you can see here, I've played a lot of games. I haven't played them all in order, but I'm going to pick this game. It's game 17 between the Red Wings and the Blackhawks. It tells me who my starting goalies are. And you can see I have my colors set up. So in general, it looks good. So just a little bit of layout of this. You can see here this game description. For historical games, it might have a little bit more because it knows the historic date of the game. But in general, it's going to tell you who's playing it, what game number it is for each team. This is telling me in my league, this is game 3 for the Blackhawks and game 4 for the Red Wings. And in my overall league, this is game 17. The on the left, the home's on the right. You got the scoring summary. This is the power play summary, the shots on goal summary, and down here, here's the kind of the skaters for each team, the goaltenders for each team. Here's the scoring log or the score log where we record all the goals. This is for the penalties down here. And in this game, I'm just going to be using basic stats. So I'll just kind of review where this one is. I should double check it here. Go to my game options. This is using basic stats, which means I'm not doing individual shots on goal. At option 3, I am going to keep track of the saves for the goalie. I'm not going to worry about game-winning goals. And this is just telling me here that if I were to record a power play or a shorthanded goal and that team doesn't have any, or doesn't appear to have any power play or shorthanded opportunities, that it will give me a warning. And number 6 here about penalties, I have the use generic penalty names off. So that means I'm going to be using the actual penalty names as like cross-checking or hooking, as opposed to generic penalties like just minor or major or misconduct like that. So, and I obviously have my team colors on. So I have it set up for that. We'll just look at the config sheet just because I need to take this off the shots on goal. So I'm not doing shots on goal or hits. And it's just showing games, assists, points, penalties, and penalty minutes. And that's, for this, all I'm going to worry about keeping track of on the score sheet. One perk about showing less is it just takes up less room on my screen. So here I have all that set up. And for this, again, for this demonstration, what I am going to do is kind of follow along the historic box score of this game, just to give myself something to work from. So let's start with that. So, and I've played several games like this in developing this spreadsheet, but what I'm going to do is kind of just show you here. This is where I would see the box score for this game on hockeyreference.com. It says that the Blackhawks won this game 2-1. Here's the scoring summary, and here's the penalty summary. So I'm going to kind of just follow this in part, just so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. And I'll kind of show here. This first thing I want to show is, I'll do this, try to do it in chronological order, but in the first period we have this kind of incident here where we have, looks like Shires, Troy gets 2 minutes high sticking and then gets into a fight with Jerry Pinder at 26 seconds into the game. So let's move that aside and let's pretend that's what happens in our game. So first, before I do that, I want to do just a couple other things. One is, I'm going to click this button to hide this top row because I don't really need any of this stuff during my game, or hopefully I won't. So I'm going to click on that to kind of hide my top row. It gives me a little more space. Second, I want to point out, when you load a game, this here is what indicates what the active period is. So this tells me, and you load a game, it automatically sets it to the first period. Also down here, where your goalies are, this indicates who the active goalie is. So if I'm going to follow this, I'll kind of look at my score sheet box score over here. And in this game, it says that Jerry Desjardins was actually the starting goalie and not Esposito. Roy Edwards was for the Red Wings. So Roy Edwards is the active goalie. But here, Gary Desjardins is. So I'm to switch it. I simply click on the goalie's name that I want to use. So I'll click on, whoops, sometimes when I switch sheets I get that, but let's just click on his name. Do I want to switch my active goalie from Esposito to Gary? I'm assuming this is Desjardins, but maybe it's something else. Yes. So you can see it just moves this green and this X down by his name. That does a couple things actually. So, and I'll show it here. Even though the Red Wings didn't score, but I do want to show something here. So if there's a goal scored, you click this plus goal. Well, I'll say that. But one of the things it shows is the opponent's goalie right here. And you want to make sure that by changing this, this gets changed behind the scenes so it knows who's getting the goal against, essentially, or who you're scoring on. So that's why it's important to know, have the active goalie be correct. Okay, now, as I said, 26 seconds in, Jim Shires gets a penalty for high sticking. But let me do something before I even record that, which is once you load your game in here, you want to make sure your lineup is the way you want it. And for this game, I want to kind of look and see, well, who got the penalties and who scored the goals and make sure they're in my lineup. And what I can see is this Jim Shires guy is not in the Red Wings lineup. And if I look on the little research, it says this guy, oh, he was a left wing, and Frank Mahowich is not playing in this game. So I'm going to sub out Frank Mahowich for Jim Shires. So to do that, I'm going to just click on his name here. And it asks me, do you want a replacement for Frank Mahowich? Yes, I do. So then it brings up my entire bench. And here's Mr. Jim Shires. I click his name. Okay. And it puts him in here. I think, kind of looking at these stats, that should be all I have to do. Okay, and I have to make those things before I start recording goals or penalties. Otherwise, it'll say, oh, you can't make changes once you start the game. And that's the only way it really knows if you started a game is by recording something, either up in this case, in basic stats mode, to be a penalty or a goal. So now I'm finally ready. So I'm going to record this penalty. It's 26 seconds in, Jim Shires for high sticking for Detroit. So I click on this plus Detroit penalty. See here, if I hover on it, this is tricky because these cells are red, so you can't really see all the triangles. Basically, it tells you, these are the two goals, two buttons or cells to click to add penalties, and up here are the two for goals. So I'm going to click this. And so we have 26 seconds in. So, 0 minutes, 26 seconds. Now, this whole period time thing, I'll say, your game may or may not have, resolution down to the 1 second. Probably most games don't. But this game has it. You can use it or not use it. You can just put in minutes if that's all you want to use. You can use minutes in 10 seconds but not use the single digit second. However you want to use it, that's up to you. So you don't feel obligated to use it. But yeah, this would be the minutes, 10 seconds, and then the single seconds. So 26 looks like that. So we said 20 seconds in, Jim Shires, so we find him. So you can see here, it just kind of breaks up your starting lineup into forwards and defense. And so we'll select Jim Shires, and then we'll pick the penalty because we're not using generic penalties in here. So they're kind of grouped by common penalties and then less common penalties. So this was high sticking according to the box score. and it kind of knows based on what you pick what the penalty duration should be. You can always change it, but if I pick high sticking, it'll go to 2 minutes. Then I have to choose whether this penalty results in a power play or not, and this did. You know, because it looked like there was this penalty, and then they got into a fight, so they each got 5 minutes after that. But this resulted in a power play for 2 minutes. So I recorded that. I could say save and close, but I'm not going to because of this situation of there are more penalties at the same time. So I'm going to say save, and I can either say save and add opponent or save and add another. It's because I'm going to put another penalty for Jim Shires. I'm going to say save and add another. And when I click the save, it'll write it down here. It'll say, and it'll write it into the score sheet. So let's do this. So this just tells me I add it, and you can add another one now if you want. So here's the high sticking, power play yes, first period 26 seconds, 2 minutes, Jim Shires. And up here is Jim Shires, and it says he got one penalty for 2 minutes. Now we're going to add his fighting. Same time, I click this, go down to the fighting. It automatically chooses 5 minutes. There's no power play because he was fighting one of the Blackhawks, so they each got a fighting. Jerry Pinder. So this is not a power play, but this one I'm going to say save and add opponent. So it'll save it here, and then it'll relaunch the kind of penalty thing, but for the Blackhawks. So I'm going to click this purple button. So here you can see here's the fighting, no power play, same time, Jim Shires 5 minutes. I also want to point out when I save this high sticking up here, it wrote in this power play opportunity for the Blackhawks. There's one power play opportunity. So now we're on the Blackhawks. It's kept my time. Now I gotta find Jerry Pinder. Here he is. He gets fighting. 5 minutes. No power play, but now I'm done. So I can just say save and close. Also, this period is automatically selected based on what the period is up here. You can change it if you wanted to, if you had to go back maybe and fix something that you forgot to add. But typically, you shouldn't have to mess with it because it should be the period that you're actually playing. So I'm going to say save and close. And now we have Jerry Pinder's fighting here. And it shows his kind of fighting penalty stats over here. And we're all set to move on with our game. Okay, according to our hockeyreference.com, the only other thing that happens in the first period is this goal, this unassisted goal by Detroit's Tom Webster at 6:13. So let's do that. So I click the Red Wings goal button over here. 6:13, 6 minutes, 10, 3. 6:13. Even strength, because it didn't say otherwise. Tom Webster here. Now it was unassisted, so that means I'll leave these assists 1 and 2 just none. If I accidentally gave it to somebody, I could always fix it by putting none over here, and it'll never let two people get assist 1 or assist 2. You can see they scored it on Gary Desjardins. So save. So here's my goal, Detroit. So here it uses the color coding here. First period, 6:13. Tom Webster, no assists, even strength. It also marks this goal against down here for him. I'll also take this opportunity to show this button here, which says Show Hide Score Log Goalie. So this is the score log, where you track all your goals. And what this will do is show you this hidden column here that this, to kind of complete the goal, is it also includes who the goal was scored on. So here it's saying it was scored on Gary Desjardins. But typically we don't need to see that, so I usually just keep it hidden. But it's there if you wanted to see it. Here it says even strength. So that's how we record that goal. So now let's move on to the second period. Okay, referencing our hockey reference box score again, we can see in the second period, if we look at these two, the first thing that happens is at 124, Bobby Hull scores from Ryan Campbell. So now, what we want to do is switch this period to period number 2. By clicking up here, it kind of turns it green, and then it fills in these zeros for both the shots on goal and in the scoring. And now we're ready for period number 2. The goal was Bobby Hull. So that's a Blackhawks goal. So I click this plus goal for the Blackhawks. Now it shows second period. Set the time to be 124. 124. Even strength. Bobby Hull from Brian Campbell. There's only one assist, so I'll leave that one blank. I'm just going to show you something. So let's pretend I accidentally put Dennis Hall by mistake and gave him the goal. So I say, okay, save. And then I realize, like, oh no, I made a mistake. So what I want, the way to fix this is two things. One, you can click on any cell in this row to edit it. So if I click, I was going to click Dennis Hall, but it doesn't really matter what I click here. I click it, it'll ask me, hey, do you want to edit this goal? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes, I do. So it'll load that goal with the time and all the details that are entered on this line here. And now I can fix it. So now I really just need to change this Dennis Hall to Bobby Hull. And then everything else is correct. So I'm going to save that. But one thing it doesn't automatically do there is fix these stats up. So to do that, these are updated when you add, but when you edit, they don't always know what you changed. So what to do, if you want to correct that, you click this kind of recompute in-game stats. So when I do this, you'll see this will get corrected. So there. So now it knows that, well, it was Bobby Hall. It basically erases all the stats and goes over this goal log and the penalty log and updates the stats accordingly. So that's how that's taken care of. And I'm just going to do a couple other penalties and then we'll call it good for this period. But so it says at 148 the Blackhawks Chico Mackey is a penalty. So down here, click on the Blackhawk penalty. Second period has 148. What's that? 24 seconds after Hull scores. 148 Chico Mackey for holding. That's 2 minutes. Power play. Yes. Save and close. And we'll see now it updates the Detroit's power play opportunities to 1 and records the penalty right here. The next thing it says is at 10:29 Gary Bergman takes a penalty for high sticking. Now I'll kind of mention here that if you want to use generic penalties, instead of having this drop down list, there'll just be 3 buttons here that you just pick minor or major misconduct. So it's definitely faster, just a matter of how you want to record it on your score sheet. And then at 14:35 we have offsetting penalties between Bergman and Mackey. So let's do this at 14, so 14:25. Okay, 1425 with both of them with high sticking. So I'll say Chico Mackey, high sticking, 2 minutes, not a power play because they're offsetting. And I'll say save and add opponent. And here I want to add Bergman with this high sticking power play. No, save and close. And I won't go through all the other penalties, but I'm going to just kind of jump ahead here to the third period. Let's update our. Oh, I forgot one other thing. At 7:39 in the second, the Blackhawks score their second goal. Pitt Martin from Dan Maloney and Bill White. So let's do that. So Blackhawks goal, second period, 7:39. Even strength. Pitt Martin scores from Dan Maloney and Bill White. Say, now we have a 2-1 game. And I'm going to go to the third period. There's a couple of penalties in there, but I'm just going to jump ahead now to the end of the game, and let's go over how to handle at the end of the game. Okay, so at the end of the game, I put in, there was a couple of, I put in one third period penalty, but now that's how the game ends, 2-1. What do we do now? So I'm going to click on this show hide row 1 again to get my row 1 back. There's a couple things we want to do. In general, you should always click this compute end of game stats, even though it kind of computes the stats as you're going, and that typically will be correct, and it should be, but just in case you edited something and didn't recompute the in-game stats, it's probably a good idea to hit this compute end of game stats after every game. So if I click this, again, it'll do all that, and now if I think I'm done, I could say save game result and stats, which would basically save the game result to the standings and the stats sheets. I'll click it here, although it's going to give me an error, but that's okay. So it says error visitor goalie, Gary Desjardins, has one goal against but no time on ice. Please correct and retry. Okay. So I did that intentionally just kind of to point out how do we finish up these goalie stats. So when you compute the in-game stats, it knows if they allowed any goals. So it says that he allowed one goal and Roy Edwards allowed 2 goals. But that's all it put in. It doesn't really keep track of who's. It doesn't really know who started. It just knows who it is right now. So what we want to do now is enter the time on ice, and we also want to enter our saves for our goalies, because that's what stats I'm tracking for these basic stats are goalie saves, but not individual shots on goal. So for Gary Desjardins, I'm going to click in this time on ice. As you can see here, again, that just tells you what these things mean. If I click in the time on ice in his row, I'll get this pop-up for the time on ice chooser. And because 60 is kind of a popular one, I made it a little bit bigger, so you just click 60. Okay, and it writes in 60 minutes and 0 seconds. Same over here for Roy Edwards. I could look and see if he actually played all. Okay, this is good. If I look in the box score, it says that he was on the ice for 59 minutes and 27 seconds. That then obviously that means they pulled their goalie at the end. So let's do that. So 59 minutes. So that would be 59 and 27 seconds. And so what that means, obviously, is that the goal was empty for these last 33 seconds. So I'm going to put the, I won't do it yet, but I want to show you something on it later. So let's finish up here for Roy Edwards in this RES, which is goalie game result stats. This is where you kind of put in their other stats for the game. So here if we click in it, we're going to say he started the game and he lost the game. So we'll put that in there. Now over here on Gary Desjardins, I could say he started and won. And if I didn't put the win, I'll just do it intentionally here and click the save game. It'll, yeah, you can see here it says invalid visitor goalie stats. No win was found. Please correct it, because it can tell who won this game. Some goalies should get credit for it. This is a good example of once a cell is selected, sometimes you have to select off of it so you can select it again. So I'm going to say, yeah, he started and won the game. And now I want to put in these saves. So if I look at the hockey reference box score, it says Roy Williams had 23 saves. So I'll click in the save box and enter 23. Now, if I didn't have any time on ice, like let's say I'm going to click over here, I'm going to click saves for Tony Esposito, kind of by mistake, but intentional. If I click here, it tells me you can only enter saves for a goalie with time on ice, so fix it. And that just kind of reminds me, like, oh, I clicked the wrong guy. But it won't let you put in saves if they have no time on ice. So let's put in Gary's saves. If I look at the hockey reference, it says he had 17 saves. So you can say you have a limit of up to 99 saves. So that's just a limitation. Okay, so now you can see now it does calculate the save percentage for each of these goalies. It doesn't calculate the goals against average in a single game. It just I didn't think that was worth it, so it doesn't do it. But anyway, so now I think I got all my stuff set, and I go up here and click Save Game Result and Stats, and it's gonna complain one more time because the two teams, the goalies' time on ice don't match. I got 59-27 versus 60 because I kind of intentionally here forgot to put this empty net time in. So Detroit's team goalie, on parentheses empty net, was 33 seconds because this had 59-27. So in here, put in 33 seconds. Okay. So now everything should work. And so we'll try it again here. Let's see. Save game and save game result and stats. And when it kind of starts flickering around, that tells you that it's saving the stats for the game. That it couldn't find anything wrong. It doesn't mean there is nothing wrong, but it only checks so many things. So it does a couple of classic Excel backflips. And then hopefully you'll get this message here. It says game stats successfully saved. I'm going to click OK. Now let's take a brief look and see what it did. Okay, so it saved the game result and stats. Let's just review a couple things. So the first thing I want to look is in the standings. So I'm going to try to use this navigator here on the main tab. I'm going to check the schedule. Actually, I'm going to look first. So this was game 17. If I find game 17 here, so here's that row. You can see here it filled in. This is gray now because it was played. The Blackhawks won, so they're in green. The Redhawks lost, so that's in red. And it shows the score, 2-1. One thing I realized as I did this was I don't have any game notes in here. And depending on what your how you play your games, you may want to put something in here like you know Pitt Martin with the go-ahead goal in the second period or something like that. So I could write if I wrote that up here with game. Jeez, I can't even type. Winner in the second. It's kind of a boring note, but it's something. So if I wanted to, I could click this again and it'll resave it with that. First it'll say, hey, I already found stats for this. Do you want to overwrite them? In this case, I'm going to say, yes, go ahead, overwrite them. So it kind of deletes the old ones, rewrites the same things. But now, when it's done over on the schedule, it'll have my game notes there. It'll also put them in the stat sheets. But now if I look in the schedule, here's my Pitt Martin note here. And because this is pretty small, you can click this cell here to expand that. So if I click it, you'll kind of see it'll expand this up. And here's that Pitt Martin with the game winner in the second note. I can click it again. Oops, I need to click off it and back in it. And it'll squeeze things back up. So that's how it updates the schedule. It also updates the standings. We didn't really look at the standings beforehand, but it did update the standings. And I'm going to carry on with just quickly looking at the game stats here. But I'll make a different video that covers all the other stats. But if we go up here to the stats, before I do that, I want to show this box score. So if you wanted to generate a box score, you can click this button. It kind of does the same thing kind of validation wise as the save game stats does. So it'll make sure everything's legit before it does it, or to the best it can. You can see here it's pretty simple because we didn't track individual shots on goal. It doesn't show anything here, but it just kind of shows the scoreboard, basic game ID and stuff, power play opportunities, the game description, and the game notes, as well as the scoring summary and the penalty summary. And it doesn't use any color coding in this. It's kind of, I guess, kind of like a newspaper in that regard. So that's this. And if you wanted to print this, you could click this blue button and it kind of selects that. And then you could go into your print and say print print selection instead of print active sheet, print selection, and it'll just print that much so you can kind of get a bigger printout if you wanted to print something. Similarly, if I go back to the score sheet, it also has a print helper, I guess you'd say. So if I click this prep for print to PDF, you can see what it does is it selects the score sheet, just the part that's needed to keep, for the score. And then I could do the same thing. Go to File, go to Print. And it already knows it has print selection from the last time. So this, if I wanted to print this and save it as a PDF someplace as kind of a historical record for this game result, I could. Or if you want to save them and then maybe, post it to some forum where Bobby Hull had 5 goals or something, you could do that. But that's just a helper function if you want to help just save a nicer looking printout of the box score or the score sheet itself. So lastly, I want to go to these basic stats sheets. So up here is stats, going to go to the skater game log, and this is it has the basically the skater game logs from all the games, but we kind of want to look at the one we just did, just so I can show you. So in this game ID, I know this was game 17 right here. So on these, you can click these to filter. I'm going to say 17 Detroit versus the Blackhawks. So this is all the stats just for this game. These 40 rows up for the skaters. You can see here, this is just the game player skater stats. So it just like shows the row for each player that played in the game. It says they have a game played, and then what stats did they accumulate during the game. And that's for all the skaters. And similarly for the goalies, I'll probably scroll, it'll be at the bottom. So here's game 17. So here, so it has 3 records here. These 2 goalies, plus it shows Detroit's empty net that was in there for 33 seconds. And I'll get into this in a different video. But that, in short, is how you would use a score sheet for a basic game. Now I'm going to show you a little bit on for an advanced stat game how it will be a little bit different. Now, obviously, typically, you're not going to be changing, going from basic to advanced stats, during the game or even redoing a game. But for this case, I just want to kind of show how to use a score sheet and also how that advanced stat thing works. So I'm going to go back here to the first period here, and I'm going to go to my game options. I gotta remember to use these up here. Score sheet setup, game options, and I'm going to turn on advanced stats. Again, you typically have all this done before you start your game. Okay, and the main thing I want to do is I'm going to update this, and now I'm going to go to my config, and I'm going to keep track of just shots on goal. I don't care about these ones, but I'll put the hits in the blocks just for fun. Now I'm going to have add these 3 columns to my score sheet. So I'll update that. So now you can see here it shows the shots on goal, hits, and blocks. You can see here for the people that scored, they already have 1 shot on goal, so it knew about that anyway. And same over here for this Tom Webster's goal, he gets a shot on goal. But what I want to do is just kind of, I guess I could just start the whole game over, but I don't think that's really necessary. I just want to show this different part of it. But since I put the game in advanced stats mode and we turned on these 3 additional stat categories of shots on goal, hits, and block shots, by having advanced stats, this button is shown. And in addition to that button being shown, over here on the right, I'm going to zoom this down a little bit, it shows this event log. Let me get this out of my way. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go back and add some shots in the first period, some in the second, and you'll get the idea. So I click this show hide event forms, and that brings up these 2 windows, one for each team. And how these work is they just log events into this event log. And the main thing they're good for, this purple part is you say which event am I logging. And it doesn't really log shots on goal, it logs saves, but a save is a shot on goal. So they're kind of 2 sides of pretty much the same coin other than when a goal is scored. But we're already logging. We already know about the goals. This is just worrying about the saves. So since I set this to the first period here, they both say first period here. So I'm just going to add a few shots on Roy Edwards, like Bobby Hall and Makita, because I already have a save set. So when I this is saying add a save. Let's give Makita another shot. Dan Maloney. Well, Keith Magnuson. So you can see here with each one, it writes it over here as a save. The event, is a save for this goalie on this team in this period and this even strength. I probably should have put a couple. Let's put a couple power play shots just for the heck of it. So for each team. So I'll put this team power play, and Dennis Hull takes a shot, and Keith Magnuson takes a shot. Not a point. Over here, Alex Del Vecchio gets a power play shot. So you can see that. So that's how that would work. I want to let me put a few more, and let's just say Gary Bergman puts a big hit on somebody. You'll see here now it'll say hit by Bergman. Doesn't have any attribute for that, so it doesn't need it. Similarly, if Jerry Korab had a blocked shot, I could put a blocked shot, check that, and then say add, and I put Jerry Korab with a block over here. Now I'm just going to show you when you switch periods. These windows are what I call floating windows or non-modal windows, but the point is they kind of just stay there, and you can interact with the spreadsheet without closing them. That's what's nice about them. So now I'm going to switch this to the second period. So watch right here. This period thing should change, and it will go to the second period. So we can add a few more shots. Hull gets like 3 shots. Makita, Maloney, Jerry Korab. Oh, jeez. Oh, this is okay. I accidentally put these blocked shots instead of shots. So this is a good example of how do you edit this. And if I hover up here on this number, you'll see to correct an event, you have to delete it and re-add it. So it's not that forgiving. But to delete it, you click on a row, and then it'll ask you. So I just would click here. You gotta click in this column. Do you want to delete that? Yep. Want to delete this? Yes. And it kind of then shifts them all up. So I'm just gonna clear out a couple of the other ones since I got a little crazy on the block shots thing here. But that's alright. It's a good example. So let's give Detroit a few more. Give Chicago a few more shots. So you need to put this back on saves for both these people. And then let's give Gary Desjardins some more saves. So like this. Let's give Gordie Howe a couple of shots. Like that. That's all in the second period. You can see that. So now if we go, okay, good enough. Third period, we give them each a few more shots. And obviously in a real game, you'd be kind of going back and forth, but I'm just kind of doing this for example. And you can see, if we want to add a couple hits, let's give Gordie Howe a hit, and maybe this guy gets a block shot. So, good enough. That's the point is, for advanced stats, this is where you log that information. This is where it goes. This is how you record it. And the main thing you're going to be using it is for saves. So I'm going to close these up for right now. And now I'm going to redo this And you can see here, as I was doing this, it was filling in these shots on goal. And just to show how it works, I'm going to click this recompute, and you'll see what it's going to do. So when I hit recompute, it fills in these things. So you can see here now, over here on these shots on goal, there's 12 shots on goals and 1 goal for Detroit. So that translates to Gary Desjardins as having 1 goal against and 11 saves. So that's the 12 shots on goal. Over here, the shots on goal is 17. So he has 15 saves and 2 goals against. So that's the 17. So that's how that works. So this shows like this because I have this at 80%. So if I increase this to 100%, it should show everything that's in the cells. So that's how the advanced stats works with tracking shots on goal as well as the saves and hits and blocks. I think one more thing I should show is how to correct. I think I showed how to correct a goal already, but how to correct a penalty. If I make a mistake on a penalty, same kind of thing. I can, let's say this penalty here wasn't on Bergman, but was on somebody else. I could click this and it'll prompt me, do you want to save this? Edit it? Yes, I do. And then I could say, okay, it wasn't on Bergman, it was on Falkenberg. He did it. Now watch here when I say this, it'll correct this. But it won't make the change up here. I'll have to redo my stats to get Falkenberg his penalty. And now he has it, and then Bergman only has the 2 minutes. So that kind of showed how do you record and edit a goal, how you record and edit a penalty, how you record and edit an event. The edit event is basically just delete it and re-add it. So it's not quite as savvy, but I think for the events it's adequate. And so when you're done, like I said, if you make some mistakes or you need to fix it, you can always resave your game, and it'll prompt you whether you want to overwrite your stats or not. So I'm just going to do that here, just for the heck of it. Overwrite it. And that, I believe, pretty much wraps up how to use the score sheet. It's mostly about, once you get you know how you're going to save your stats, get your lineup set for the game, record your goals, record your penalties, record your events if you're going to record any events, and then compute your stats at the end of the game. Manually, kind of semi-manually, I don't want to say it's manual, you got to add your goalie stats, your time on ice. You may need to add your saves manually depending on how you're tracking your stats. You have to put in this result for win and loss or shutout, however you're going to do it. And then save your stats. You may want to print it or whatever, but in general, the goal of this score sheet and even the whole spreadsheet in general is to try to have you efficiently enter and record your game stats without having to type anything. So the only thing that you kind of have to type right now would be if you have to put in the game-winning goal, if we were to keep track of that, well, let's quickly do that. I'm just going to go ahead and change my option and say, oh yeah, I'm using game-winning goals. So now it'll put this column here. And now I'm going to say save these stats. Let me try this computer. I forget where this does this check. Okay, so that's done. Now I say save, and here's where it tells me, hey, looks like you're missing a game-winning goal. Assign it to something's wrong. Either it couldn't find it, or it's assigned to multiple players, or something. So in this one, you'd say, oh, Pitt Martin got the game-winning goal. So to do that, I'd find Pitt Martin, And right now I have to just go to this game-winning goal. Right now I just put a 1 in. I think I'll probably switch that so you click it and it'll say, prompt you and say, did he get the game-winning goal? And you just click yes or no. But right now, that's how it works. So, and then I could do the save and it'll ask me, you want to overwrite? Yes. So, uh, that's a lot of me talking, but there's a lot of little aspects to the score sheet. And as I said before, the score sheet is really where, I don't want to say all the magic happens, but all the a lot of important stuff happens where you're actually recording the results of your game, and that's why you're using this spreadsheet and why you have your hockey project. You know, that's what's fun. So I want this to work as efficiently as possible. So that wraps it up. I'm going to put one more. I'll put another video out there on just looking at the stats, but this concludes the score sheet. Well, maybe it doesn't quite conclude the score sheet, but I'll make a different video on just dealing with shootouts. But that's a special video. That's it. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. And like Red Green says, keep your stick on the ice.